here's how Hollywood took control of the culture. They told stories that taught you a lesson, because that's how people taught lessons through all of history.
Right.
And when everyone was sitting around the campfire in prehistoric times and the shaman was telling a story, he didn't have a clumsy set of dialogue where like the SJW got owned or whatever, or the conservative got owned or whatever. He just told a story. And through the story itself and what happened to the character, you learned a lesson about how you should behave, about morality, about life.
Yes.
The problem is so much of our media tells a really, really bad story and gives you a really bad moral lesson, but they're so good and they have this art perfected at making you buy into horrible stuff. So an example I love to use, this is one of the most popular films of all time, Titanic.
Yep.
And I love using this as an example because it is a masterclass in this exact kind of emotional manipulation. If I just lay out the plot for that story on paper, completely black and white, it is about a woman who is engaged to be married to a man. They're traveling to the United States. Well, she's on a ship with him. She begins cheating on him with a homeless man. And then she fornicates with this homeless man in the back of a car in the bottom of a ship, has him draw a picture of her nude, wearing her engagement present that her fiance got her, puts it in the safe that he owns just to insult him. Then when the ship is sinking, she jumps off a lifeboat to get back onto the ship. And then even the homeless guy ends up dying trying to save her. Like and sorry for the spoilers if you haven't seen it, right? on paper, you do not hear that story and root for that woman. You do not hear that story and go, that's so beautiful, right? But listen, man, I am man enough to acknowledge that movie draws you in. The special effects are phenomenal. The music is like gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching. The cinematography is executed brilliantly. They're able to hypnotize you into celebrating like the horrible actions of this woman who by the end of the film, by the way, when she's in her like 90s, is still a really selfish person, because what does she do? She like drops the diamond off the side of the boat instead of giving it to the people who were searching for it, or her granddaughter, or like giving it to the poor or whatever. She just throws all this wealth away. So the reason I like bringing that up as an example is because it's like a perfect case study, because you don't know, no one thinks like Titanic, that's leftist propaganda. But that film is pro-adultery. That film is pro-fornication. That film is pro-licentiousness. That is how Hollywood has done this for years, by having a person who does really, really bad things either not pay a consequence for it, or for you to actually appreciate and celebrate the bad things that they're doing. So what and this is a big part of what we're doing with our show, is we're just telling really good, really fun, really interesting stories where we don't celebrate people who are doing bad things. Like we don't, like, yes, there are some jokes in there. There are people who do bad things, but like we don't celebrate it, and we make it clear that like that's not the winning strategy. By the end of the story, you know what we're trying to say, but again, without it being heavy-handed, just because you saw what happened to the characters, you saw where the story went.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And so that's why, I mean, for me, developing storylines is the funnest aspect of what you're doing, right? Like you start with an intention, and then you build this whole thing around. There was a few years ago, I got a film crew together, and I was trying to put together a reel to try and sell about the Second Amendment. And it was really, all right, like, what's the storyline going to be? And, and that was the fun part, right? Trying to figure out what the end result in the individual's mind is going to be. Can you kind of talk to us about your process of picking a topic, breaking it out? And, there's this really great video that always kind of recirculates on the interwebs there. And it's with Trey Stone and Matt Parker talking about the development of plot lines. Like this needs to go this needs to go here, then something needs to happen to rebuild it here. Can you just walk through how you guys do it?
1,000,000%. Yeah. And I just want to mention about the Second Amendment first, because I think this is a really strong point, and it relates to something you and I were talking about before the show. one of the most pro Second Amendment films ever made. One of the films that inspired Americans to say we need to hold on to our firearms. Silly as this might sound, but I am being serious. It was not some pro Second Amendment documentary. It was Red Dawn. Like, I am so serious about this, by the way. I really mean this.
You're spot on.
I know. I love. Listen, I know. I've seen the '80s version. It is silly. It is cheesy. It is ridiculous. And I don't think it was even. It was trying to be a pro 2A movie or anything like that. But what you got to remember is, like, in the same way that Titanic promotes fornication, or, like, you know, a film like Philadelphia promotes homosexuality, Red Dawn was promoting gun ownership, whether it realized it or not, because the story puts in your mind, oh, like, actually the purpose of the Second Amendment is to fight a tyrannical government or a foreign invasion or something along those lines. So and that's kind of what we're trying to tell. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just got to tell you, I love your brain.
Thank you, brother.
Your ability to see those things and those narratives, you know. And I just, one quick note before you get into the details of this. I think everybody who is waking up to this stuff, right? They're seeing it now. Like, it's not camouflaged anymore. They know that you've been propagandized. You've been led down this very long, very arduous path of what you're consuming for inspiration, right? And that's why you consume media in the first place, is for this. It makes you feel something, right? Like, everybody remembers, their first major breakup and what song you listen to on repeat, right? Everybody remembers, that movie for me, I was in college, I watched JFK. I was like, holy shit, the government's bad. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's the thing about this. That's the power of what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And this is the thing, because I know that there are some people on occasion who will scoff at this. Well, the documentary is much more important. Listen, there are great documentaries, but let's face it, as brilliant as you think you are, Mr. Smarty Pants who only watches documentary, this is me talking to the hypothetical opponent I have in my head. You are more influenced by a narrative film than you are by documentary, whether you realize it or not. And the documentary is still important, by the way. I'm not dismissing it, but I'm saying conservatives have done a lot of that. We need to make narrative stories.